Hey guys, how are we doing? Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. And I know I've bring it up a little bit lately, but we are one day from the main event, Trump versus Harris. Who's going to be the new president of the United States? I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, and people say, well, what are you talking about this for? It's boxing. But hey, it's just fascinating. It is fascinating to see what's going to happen. Very, very even and intriguing to see who will be the next president of the United States. This time tomorrow we should have a pretty good idea. But anyway, onto the boxing. And the big news yesterday was that Nayoa Inoue has signed a sponsorship agreement with the Riyadh season in Saudi Arabia. It's like an ambassadorship or something like that. And not actually fighting for or any promotional firm. There's obviously with Top Rank, so he won't be on the cards, but he's being paid up to $20 million just to be an ambassador for the Riyadh season. And I don't know, wear a t-shirt or attend the events, get a few photos, I'm not sure, but up to $20 million. Now there has been some people refute that, and I think Tim Bradley was one yesterday who said that's not right. Just he said, I can't reveal my source, but trust me, it's not $20 million, whatever. If it's $10 million, it's still a lot of money just to be an ambassador, not actually do anything on the cards. I mean, maybe you'll go there and get up in the ring and endorse Riyadh season, maybe do a commercial or something like that. But the question I've got is, hey, look, good on Nayoa Inoue for taking the money. I would as well. But really, what is he actually going to do for Saudi Arabia? I don't understand it. Is it really going to, and I'm assuming they're aiming for the Japanese market, the boxing market maybe, but I don't know, Japanese is a lot bigger market. Whether they're looking at that to try and get Japanese people to Saudi Arabia, not sure. There's a lot of Japanese people heading to Saudi Arabia, I don't know. And whether even the great Naoya Inoue will convince people to go over there and spend the money. Now, probably when you think about it, wouldn't take a lot of people to actually influence to go over there to get their $20 million back, would it, as far as investing in the country? But anyway, so that's the latest news doing the rounds. Of course, he's still with Top Rank, so that's got nothing to do with it. It's just a sponsorship deal. And yeah, good on Nayoa Inoue. But I think, just quickly on Inoue, I think one thing I hope he doesn't do, the talking about at the moment, maybe him after this fight with Sam Goodman going to 126 and then potentially 130 and maybe even 135. I hope that's not the case. I hope he stays at 122 for the time being, because, or even go back down to 118, because the biggest fight in Japanese history is there for him, the fight against Junto Nakatani. And of course, there's also Jesse Bam Rodriguez that is making noises about also going to 118. And surely, with everything going on in Naoya Inoue's career, that he would look at those fights as being the two biggest fights out there for him. He's 31 years old now, so he's got to look at those type of fights while he's still in his prime. I don't see any fights at 126, especially not 130. I don't think you can go that far, but even if it's 126, yeah, okay, there's Nick Ball and a couple others up there, but not really anything to really get him excited for those big money fights. Junto Nakatani would be the biggest fight in Japanese history. Bam Rodriguez would just be massive as well. Big money fights. So you got to remember too, Naoya Inoue is not actually saying this. It's everyone else out there saying he's got to go to 126 and 130 or even 135 about his legacy. Screw the legacy crap. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's a 4-division world champion. Stay where, I think he stays where he is, and potentially fights both those guys next year maybe. Who knows? But another bit of news that slipped through yesterday, didn't get a lot of attention, was that Conor Wallace, the Irish Australian, has signed a deal with Matchroom Boxing. So he now enters a stable with Jaya Pataya, Sky Nicholson, Liam Paro, and yeah, who knows what's going to happen with Conor Wallace now. Big opportunity for him. They're obviously very excited about what he brings to the table and what he can do in that division. It just depends, I suppose. Like he's talking about potential world title shots. The only problem with that is that all belts are held by Artur Beterbiev, and he's pretty much tied up for next year. He's got his mandatory early next year, then he's got Bivol at the end of the year. So unless there's a vacant title, I think there had been talks that maybe the IBF were going to strip Beterbiev, but it looks like he will take his mandatory and get that out of the way, and then concentrate on Dimitri Bivol after that. So look, you just got to hang in there. I think he's still relatively young, Conor Wallace. I think he's 28, so he's got a little bit of time. Better be, if you wouldn't have thought, would be around too much longer. But then I suppose we've got the potential of fighters like Benavidez and Morrell and maybe even Canelo that are moving up there, or that Benavidez and Morrell are already there, but maybe Canelo moves up and he gets involved, might make it a little bit hard. But all that aside, I'm sure he'll get his opportunity at some stage. So congratulations to Conor Wallace. He's a really good guy, typical Irishman, very bubbly, a lot of personality, loves a drink, loves to fight. So yeah, all the best to Conor Wallace. All right, well, on to a little bit of myself again today. Yesterday and it was great to get the feedback, by the way, from everyone that complimented what I was talking about. And again, I'll say it wasn't a me sort of thing. It was just to give you a bit of insight of my 40 years in the sport. And yesterday I sort of covered how I got into the sport, and then my first fight, which was still an unbelievable experience, and I still remember it even to this day, how excited I was. But it took actually a while after that actually to get another fight. I only had one fight the following year. So today I'm going to just talk about my first half a dozen fights, because it's got a little bit of relevance to what happens. And so I had my second fight in 1985, so a year later. But actually it wasn't a year later, it was probably about 8 or 9 months later. But that was the only fight I had. Very tough back then, unlike these days where, you know, the sport is just full of young kids. Victoria, for some reason, even with the population of Victoria, always struggled with the volume of fighters, unlike New South Wales and Queensland. So especially when I was 11 years old, these days you've got to be 14, so it's a lot easier to get fights. Back then there wasn't, as far as I know, there wasn't obviously an open age, or a minimum age. So I was 11 and I fought another young kid from, where's he from? I can't remember where. His name was Anthony Pretenzi was his name. And by the way, I had about 100 fights. I'm not going to go through every single fight I had, but just the relevant ones. But I fought young Anthony at the I think he was from Preston, that's right, but I fought him at the St Kilda Town Hall, or the Moorabbin Town Hall it was. And that's right, Moorabbin Town Hall. He was from Preston, the fight was at Moorabbin Town Hall. And it was a little bit different this time, because all of a sudden I thought I had a lot of time to think about it. The fight was pre-planned. It wasn't just a luck thing that happened in my first fight. So I had plenty of time to think about it, and the occasion got to me. I actually won the fight, by the way, and performed pretty well. You know, he was a tough guy. I still remember it, and I was just one of those, I suppose, kids that, and I probably still do a little bit to some extent, overthink things and play it out of my head 100 times before it happened. So by the time I got in the ring, I was a little bit of a nervous wreck. And the first round, I actually started to hyperventilate, or maybe I did hyperventilate a little bit, but I started to dry reach halfway through the first round, and I was keeling over, and I don't know how the referee, this way buddy, I don't know how the referee didn't stop the fight, really, because I'm moving around and then I'm dry reaching at the same time. So it was quite bizarre, and the referee let it go. Didn't even ask me if I was okay. That's how well the referee was going. But come on, man. Neil's decided to check out this new lawn. I'm just a bit reluctant to step on it. I've obviously put a bit of work into it. Come here, man. Let's get you off there, and we'll walk on someone else's lawn. Come on, buddy. So anyway, so I'm dry reaching in the middle of the first round. For some miracle, the referee didn't pull me up and ask me if I was okay, or even stop the fight. So I got through the first round, and then I was okay. I managed to get through it and won the fight. So all of a sudden I was 2-0 and riding high, but it was a tough fight. And that was the fight I think I said yesterday about the colours I wore. I actually was wearing black and white in that, or white with black. And I can't believe to this day I was wearing Collingwood colours just after I'd worn Essendon colours. So, but so that was the second fight. So in 19, and look, it was actually a good year. Probably doesn't sound like I did a lot because I only had the one fight, but I learned a lot. I spent a lot of time in the gym. A lot of moving different gyms, going to Melbourne a lot, sparring, all that sort of stuff, and I got a fair bit of experience. And I think when you're 11 years old, there's not a lot of rush just to throw you in there and keep fighting. It's about learning the sport, and that's what I did. And I think I developed really well. And then we got to 1986. I was 12 by then, and I had 4 fights in 1986. That's probably where I started to go and or started to get things rolling. And I had my third fight was the day of the Hoddle Street shootings, if you can remember that, in Melbourne. And we got delayed, and again, I was a really anxious kid and nervous kid, and again, overthought things a lot, and we're going through Melbourne to go. I think the fight was it Dandenong, I think it was, from memory, and it was against the kid I fought in my first fight, Khan Johnson. And I fought him a couple of times, another one after this, but anyway, this is the second time. And going through Melbourne, of course, all the streets are blocked off, and it was just pandemonium everywhere, and no one knew what was happening, and I was starting to panic that we're going to be late. And as a 12-year-old kid in the back seat, really starting to not get upset, but get really anxious about the whole thing, and really start to panic, and I'm not going to make it, I'm going to miss the fight, and all this sort of stuff. And so we got through it, we finally got there, and I think they might have actually maybe started the fight event a little bit later, because I think a lot of people were in the same boat. So I fought my old nemesis, the guy or the kid from my first fight, Khan Johnson, and again I had, maybe because it was all the anxious moments getting to the venue, but I was severely impacted again, let's say, with nerves and everything. And again, during the fight, I didn't dry reach this time or hyperventilate or anything like that, but I got through the fight. I can't really remember much about it because I've never seen it, because on the night, the video that was set up at the back of the room, some drunk fell over the video and destroyed the videotape. So I never got to see that fight. I've got all my other ones on tape, but never got to see that one. So anyway, I got through the fight, I won the fight. I can't really remember again much about it, but at the end of the fight, maybe all the pent up panic and aggression, and or not aggression, but panic and anxiety, or whatever, nerves, whatever you might want to call it, got to me. And as I'm heading back to the corner after the fight, my trainer Pat Connolly had the bucket ready, because I was heading over there with a head of steam, about ready to blow. And when I got to the corner, everything I'd pretty much eaten that day, probably the day before, come spilling out and into that bucket. And again, I know how I got through the fight, but I won the fight. And all of a sudden, I'm 3-0, and I'm thinking, how easy is this boxing game? It can't be that hard. I'm 3-0. I'm a superstar, and 12 years old, by the way. But 3-0. But it changed a little bit after that, because my next fight was only probably a month or so after that. I would fight my main rival again, Khan Johnson. So 3 of my first 4 fights were against the same guy. And this time, he had changed trainers to a very, very good trainer named Robbie Dower, who I think might have been an Olympian, I think, or something like that. It was a very, very good fighter, Robbie Dower. And I fought Khan Johnson for a 3rd time at the Taiab Town Hall. So my 4th fight was in Taiab. I think that's down on the Mornington Peninsula, isn't it, down near Rosebud and those types of places. But so we fought there. And this time, there was no nerves or anything like that. I thought fought really well, and I could tell straight away he'd improved so much. The other 2 times I'd fought him, probably he's just a young kid who's been in the gym punching the bags and doing a bit of pad work and just getting tucked in the ring and doing his best. But this time, I could tell that he'd been trained very, very well, and it was a very tough, even fight. And it got to the 3rd round, I knew it was even, and in the last 10 or 15 seconds, I don't know, I can't even remember what I did, but the referee took a point off me. And this is before the times of all the scoring system, by the way, the buttons and the points and all that sort of stuff. It was just scored by the judges, and I got a point taken off. I can't remember again what it was for, and it cost me the fight, and I lost the fight. And I didn't take it well, I must say. On the night I did, no dramas. You put your head down, you get out the ring and whatever. But after that, I was a kid who was a bit of a pouter, so a sulker, and I took it pretty hard as far as that. Again, I didn't play up in the ring, or didn't spit the chewy outside the ring. None of that. I just sort of went into my shell a little bit and was really disappointed. And look, I don't know if it was a good or bad thing that you react that way, but I was just like most fighters, I suppose, and most athletes, I was just just devastated that I lost the fight. Mind you, I'm 12 years old, so who really cares? But in the scheme of things, but it meant the world to me. But I got over it pretty quick. You know, he was you know, again, obviously well, and it meant the world to him as well. You know, he jumped up in the air after that, because I mean that would have been a big thing for him. He'd lost to me twice, and even though we're only kids, it would have been a big thing for him to finally knock me over in the third fight. So anyway, that was my first loss in my fourth fight. And I thought, oh well, it'll, you know, will you move on? But it didn't get much better for me, because I would lose the next two. Come on, buddy. And this time though, a little bit of extenuating circumstances, because all of a sudden I was riding high. At the end of 1986, I was 3-3, because I come up against a guy named George Basile was his name, and he was trained by the legendary Paul Ferrari. And you remember Paul? He fought for the world title against Carlos Arate, and it was for. This was just a match fight. I think the next one might have been for a state title. But anyway, I fought this kid called George Basile. And I remember in the fight thinking, geez, you know, my first 4 fights, I was, even though we were only kids, I was a lot stronger than the kids I was fighting. And I could just see that I was a lot more physically developed at that age. But I still had a little bit of puppy fat on the arms. Again, I'm 13 years old by this stage. And, you know, as I said, you got a little bit of puppy fat on you, you're not really defined. Well, the guy I fought, George Basile, he had muscly arms, like he was solid. And I'm thinking, geez, how is this guy so strong and hard, and, you know, just a lot more physically developed than what I was. And it was the first time I think I'd ever been in there with someone my own age who'd probably pushed me around and bullied me and all this sort of stuff, something I was used to being the one doing. And so I fought him down in Diamond Creek. I think that was all. Is it Diamond Creek? In the Diamond Valley, somewhere like that. I'm somewhere down that way, and I lost the fight quite convincingly. And again, really disappointed. But I was more probably concerned with the fact that, not that I really lost, because there's no disgrace in losing, but it was probably the way I lost and how dominant this guy was over me. And so we thought, oh well, we'll think not much of it. We'll just move on and move on to the next one. But then the state titles come up, and we were drawn to fight him again. And I was like, well, geez, okay, well, we'll fight him. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little intimidated by the whole thing. Not scared or anything like that. I mean, you get in there and you fight. But I remember thinking, oh, geez, I've got to come up against this guy again. So we went down to, I can't remember where it was. Actually, it might have been the Preston Town Hall, I remember. And we fought for the state 40, what was it? Might have been 42 or 44, something like kilos division, something like that anyway. But I fought him again and lost to him again. This time it was a lot closer, by the way. I you know, obviously improved a little bit, and in that time, because I might have been 2 or 3 months later, but fought him, but unfortunately lost to him again, even though it was a lot closer. And again, devastated by it all. All of a sudden, you know, I've gone from 3-0 to 3-3, and probably the Mayweather syndrome, thinking, oh well, that's my career over, I can't fight. I'm 13 years of age with a 3-3 record. But anyway, it was the interesting thing about this was that it was probably a couple of weeks after the fight, and I went into the gym, and Pat said, look at this. And he had a copy, it was a newspaper in Melbourne, I can't remember what paper it was, and it was a photo of Victoria's newest hot prospect, George Basile. And I'm reading the story, and then it said George Basile, and then with a comma, 18. And another comma. So he was 18 years of age, and it was going on about him just winning the Victorian junior title and all this sort of stuff. So question was obviously answered right there, that as a 13-year-old, I'm fighting an 18-year-old and wondering why I'm getting pushed around and bullied and all this sort of stuff. Now, I can't remember what action was taken. I think Pat might have made it quite clear to the officials, or he might have even protested, whatever, but I can't remember what happened. Obviously nothing did happen, or else I'd be able to remember it. But that was those 2 losses against George Basile, and I never forgave Paul Ferrari after that, if I'm being honest. I saw him at a few fight nights after that and never forgave him for doing that. Not so much, well, George Basile, I suppose he had a little bit to answer for as well, but at the end of the day, it's the trainer that puts them in there. I still can't believe nothing actually happened by the Victorian Amateur Boxing Association, because you would think that he would be disqualified or something might have happened, but as far as I know, nothing did. And I'm sure Pat actually brought it up with them and wanted explanations and all that. But being a 13-year-old kid, I was kept right out of the conversations, and to this day I still have no idea what happened. But at the end of the day, I was 3-3 on the scrap heap, yesterday's hero. At 13 years of age. But anyway, so that was the first 6 fights of my career, and you know, I'll probably speed through them a little bit more after this. But that was, so after 3 years in the sport, I'd had 6 fights, 3-3, and but it was probably 1987 when I just started to get a little bit more mature with that. Things started to progress from there, and I really started to pick it up. But anyway, I just thought I would let you know about that story. I did come out of it okay, no mental scars or anything like that. I was just more disappointed, but at least I could rest assured that I hadn't lost to someone my own age. I'd lost to an 18-year-old, fully developed, and he was very, very muscular and could throw down a little bit. So, but anyway, I got over it pretty quick and moved on to the next year. But that is probably the next stage of my amateur career. There's a few other stories I'll throw in there as well, but that is just a little glimpse into the next 5 fights of my my amateur career. So guys, that will do it for today. Tune in tomorrow for this gripping story of the amateur career of Lyndon Hosking. But I hope you're enjoying it anyway. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.